I have spent time with Bluetooth speakers in the past, but I've never really reviewed one until now. This is a Sanag M13S Pro, and it's a small speaker, but it's got a big personality. Thank you to the folk at Sanag for making this review possible by sending me this demo unit. All thoughts and opinions are my own. So let's jump straight into how this is built. The unboxing experience did catch me a little off guard because it does have a premium touch to it. The box has an outer sleeve with very well printed information on it, and when you slide it off, the Sanag logo is printed on the box in gold, which is a very nice touch. In the box you get the speaker, literature and a USB-A to USB-C charging cable. Moving on to the speaker itself, it's a tight and compact design with a fabric covering, and any plastic parts have a soft rubber feel to them, giving this a premium feel to it. The Sanag logo and control buttons have a grippy feel to them, and the fabric loop is anchored into the chassis pretty well, so if you're holding this loop, this speaker isn't going anywhere. Near the loop is a little window that's covered. You'll find the USB-C charging point here, and next to it a micro SD card slot for when you want to carry any music to go instead of using your Bluetooth. On the underside of the speaker, there's a grip pad so it can hold onto surfaces easily. The control buttons are tactile and have a nice feel to them since you have feedback via how they feel, as well as a click happy sound every time you press them. Then on the side of the speaker, you'll find what is a passive radiator, so lower frequencies can find their way from here. The outer lining of this is a translucent skin, and they've decided to include lighting behind it, so it looks quite cool when you've got the light on. Another neat touch is how the ridges around the passive radiator aren't flat like on the other side of the speaker. So if you stand the speaker up on this side, there is enough space for air to vent out from this area, which can change the way your music sounds and present its bass to a certain extent. This comes with Bluetooth version 5.3. You can use a micro SD card in case you don't want to use Bluetooth, so you can put your tunes on that little chip. It does have a microphone if you want to take any calls, and you can control your music and volume via the tactile buttons on the speaker. Clicking the multifunction button once will play and pause your music. Clicking it once while getting a call will answer and end calls as well. Clicking it 3 times will cycle through the lighting modes. Double clicking it when it has a micro SD card in it will switch to the micro SD card for playback and switch back to Bluetooth after another double click. Single clicks on the plus or minus buttons will increase or reduce your volume by a single increment, and pressing and holding the plus will take you to the beginning of a track or the previous track depending on where you are in the current track, and pressing and holding the minus button will take you to the next track. When it comes to using a micro SD card, it can support up to a 32 GB one, and it will only read MP3 files, which should be placed in the card with no folders in it. This does have a microphone in it in case you want to take any phone calls. Now I find this a bit odd because most people wouldn't want to take their phone calls publicly. Now I can see people using this in case you're using it in a public setting where you're speaking to somebody who has to meet you somewhere and you want to just generally discuss where you're meeting or pick up a few items to meet where you are, but I find that to be very rare. But they have included a microphone in case you do want to use it. Now, in case you want to know the overall quality of the microphone and how it would sound, here's a small demo to show you. So I'm calling you from the confines of my studio because this Sanag speaker does not have environmental noise cancelling. So testing this out in the open might just bring in every sort of noise because it does have one microphone, and I do presume that it is omnidirectional. So I have been on the camera microphone right now to give you a sense of what the camera mic is picking up right now within this space, and I'll switch over to the Sanag right about now. So the Sanag right now is about 2 feet in front of me. Here it is, in fact. So I think if you're closer to it, it will be a bit clearer because the speaker is located right under this logo near the speaker or somewhere under it. So it's bound to sound much clearer if you're closer to it. But I presume that if you were to take a few steps back, so right now I'm about 4 feet away from this. So this is the sound you can expect when you're further away from the speaker. So no doubt it's bound to sound a bit clearer when you're much closer to it. So this has been a quick call demo to show you how the vocal tonality will carry over through this Sanag microphone if you want to take phone calls on this. And I do hope that it's giving you a better understanding of the speaker, and I will see you back in the studio. This comes with a single 42.5mm dynamic driver, and it supports the SBC codec. It has a frequency response of 115 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz, and it does have an inner cavity that's designed to enhance the acoustic performance. So all those waves do push towards a passive radiator, which should help push out a little more bass from the speaker. On a volume front, this isn't exactly the loudest speaker I've heard out there, but it is a small speaker after all. And once you push past the 80% mark, it can tend to start distorting, especially if you overload it with a lot of data. Now, it does do well with some acoustic music, so the fewer instruments you're using, if you're talking about listening to flutes or guitars or lighter instruments in general, be it even classical music, it does handle that load significantly better than when you start playing anything much heavier. But having said that, it isn't loud enough. I have used this on the beach when I did go on a small break, and it was able to play loud enough because there were the waves crashing on the beach, and I didn't think this would be able to be loud enough to carry its volume or music over to me. But it is loud enough, and at the same time it stays a little bit in the distance without disturbing any conversations when you're in that kind of environment. So I think it's just about right. But instead of me rambling on about how loud or soft it can be, here's a quick demo to show you how loud it can actually get. Here's where I usually talk about soundstage, and considering this is just a single point, you can't really talk about much of a stage, but it does have that passive radiator which can enhance the overall size of it depending on where you place it and how you place it, because if you do face the passive radiator into a corner, it can tend to get a little more expansive in its delivery instead of a single point source. You can of course sit it standing up so that the passive radiator becomes down firing. This will also enhance it to a certain extent. I have tried putting it into a box just to play around with it and see how it sounds, and it can tend to sound hollow when it's in that kind of environment, depending on what kind of material the box is or where you place it exactly. But it's all about placement. If you really do want more of an expansive sound, you just have to experiment with it by putting it in drawers or certain corners to really have fun with it. Placing it in different places, of course, can give it a little more expansion, but it is limited in what it can do because it is a small speaker at the end of the day. On an imaging front, this is precisely where it took me by surprise, because of all the speakers I've heard, the detail is always a bit muddy. It's always a bit distorted. So I was expecting the Sanag to sound pretty much like that, but I'm happy to say that the imaging is surprisingly clean and clear right up to the 70 or 80% mark, right before it hits distortion. It is easy enough, it is effortless enough to be able to carry acoustic instruments across to you. The minute you start loading up too many instruments or feeding it too much data, that's where the distortion starts to kick in even more. So I'd say it's very comfortable in those with that kind of music, be it classical or acoustic, even rock music for that matter. If there isn't too much information coming through or too many instruments involved, it's perfectly fine. You can very easily zone into various nuances in your music as long as you're sitting at about, I'd say, 50 or 60% volume, and then when you start reaching that 80% mark, you're bound to hit that distortion, and it's not very pleasant to listen to over there. High frequencies are a little bright and can be a little too over energetic. So thankfully, this is a speaker and not a set of earphones that are firing directly into your ears. So you can play around with the placement and face it away from you. So this can help cull that higher frequency. This range is quite clean and well defined, but can be on the enthusiastic side for some people. Placement of the speaker is bound to make a difference to how this range delivers itself to you, but it's not shrill at easy listening volumes and can be enjoyable to listen to without dying out at those softer volumes. Listening to the new Radicals, you get what you give. Every bit of shimmer from the percussion or P's and S's from the vocalists come through cleanly and are easy to zone into and enjoy thanks to how well these image. It's surprisingly well defined from this little speaker. Mid frequencies can tend to be a little too forward, but this varies depending on what volume you listen to the speaker at. So at lower volumes, it does tend to sit a little lower down, and it blends so much better with your music. I prefer listening to this around 50% volume because this range levels out quite well here and sounds quite balanced. Vocals and instruments have good separation here, provided you are not listening to anything too heavy. As soon as you introduce music that has too many backing vocals or instruments, it seems to be a little too much of a strain on that 42mm driver. Listening to Sarah Cothran's hauntingly beautiful performance of As the World Caves In, this speaker really does shine through with how it handles this range. It carries her voice, reverb decay, and soft piano with a good amount of detail and emotion this track carries. It really does do well when you play the right kind of music on it. It's not going to be as full-bodied as some headphones or earphones can be, but it does really well for what it is. Low frequencies are not big and heavy. Rather, it's handling the bass from a bass guitar almost as if you're sitting right there next to it without it being amplified. I might sound like a broken record, but again, this speaker handles natural acoustic instruments the best. Older recordings from the 70s and 80s sound quite natural in this range, but may leave some people wanting for more of a kick in the bass. Placement of the speaker can make a difference here as well, since its passive radiator can carry lower frequencies over to you. Placing this in a corner usually does help, but if you place it on its back on the rubber pad and face the radiator to you and listen to this at lower volumes, it's very nice to listen to. If you play some EDM on this, it's very clearly not comfortable. This isn't the genre of music it's asking you to play on it, and it makes it clear when you try it. Listening to Fleetwood Mac's Hold Me, the prominent bass line from the bass guitar comes through defined well enough, but the bass drum does tend to get a little bit lost with the rest of the instruments, which are coming through clear and defined. So to sum up, on a build front, I really do like this little speaker because it's put together really well. The whole fabric concept around it does feel quite nice and different, but I do suspect that over time it will start looking a bit dirty because dirt can settle into the little grooves in the fabric, but hopefully a light vacuum should keep it clean enough. But the overall build and feel, the clickety-clack of the tactile buttons is a very nice sound on it. That little rope that's attached to the chassis is tough. It's holding it pretty tight. And even that little window that's protecting the USB-C and micro SD slots is thick and it fits really tight. So I do see this surviving a few splashes very easily. On a feature front, it's got everything a portable speaker really needs. In fact, I'm surprised it's got a microphone in it. I don't really see the need for having one, but in case you do need it, it's always there where you can use it. Something I really do like actually is that light that it has. In fact, originally I did think it would be a bit of more of a novelty piece for the speaker, but it's not overly bright, it's not distracting, it's not in your face, and I like the fact that you can cycle through all the modes of different light where it can match up with your music, or you can have it breathing, or you can just have a steady light on, and you also have the option of putting it off. It's done in a very delicate manner because the piping around the passive radiator has that translucent see-through sort of material, so it comes through looking nice and soft and diffused. It's a very calming light to have on and pulsating when you're listening to music. So I usually find myself leaving it on the pulsing mode, and it is a nice touch. On a sound front, this is crisp and detailed. In fact, I don't think Sanag has tried to make this a big sounding speaker. I like that they've not done that because it does hold its own when it comes to its overall clarity. I've not heard a smaller speaker as clean sounding as this. They usually have distortion, like I did mention. They are trying a little too hard to just produce a good enough sound, but they're not really doing it. Whereas this is very clearly a clean sounding speaker, despite only handling an SBC codec. It's doing it pretty well, in fact. So I do like the fact that it's able to sound as clear as it can. And I found myself using this most of the time in a quiet room. So even if it's playing softly in the background at 40 or 50%, you can hold a conversation with somebody. It's not too loud and it's not too soft. So it's just music sort of gliding along in the air. So you can hold conversations with people. And at the same time, despite it just being at that level, it is clear, it is crisp. You can hear all the lyrics you want to hear in the music that you're listening to. It's well rounded enough if you place it well enough with the radiator hitting a corner or with the radiator hitting facing toward you if you're sitting at a desk. I really do like how it sounds. It's for such a small speaker, it does sound more balanced than anything else. If you are somebody who likes bass, this is not heavy in the bass. It's a lot of people may not even find this adequate in the bass. If you're looking for a speaker that's heavy in the bass or big sounding, this is not for you. It's very clearly not for you. If you're someone who likes to listen to certain tunes, certain melodies, certain lyrics in music at a soft volume, where you want to keep a small speaker in your office or near a bunch of plants when you're watering them in the evening, this is the perfect speaker, I'd say, to put in that kind of calming environment. I did use this speaker briefly on the beach when I was on a bit of a break recently, and I have to say that I wasn't expecting it to be loud enough to be able to break, or should I say pierce through the noise of the ambience with the waves crashing, but it was able to push past that. In fact, I was able to hold conversations with people around. The music was being appreciated. It wasn't too loud, it wasn't too soft, it did just right. It's perfectly fine for that kind of setup or situation where you've got, let's say, 5 to 6 people around who just want some soft music and nothing too loud and nothing too thumpy. Something that I genuinely didn't like with this speaker, in fact, is when you switch it on and off, it's not exactly the softest sounding speaker, because it wants to announce to the world that it's on and it's off. And for example, I'll show you right now, it's on, and I'm going to put it off now. This is how loud it can get. So picture me trying to put my child to sleep, and she's been very happy seeing the pulsing light and having nighttime music, and after she goes to sleep, I put it off. So luckily she didn't get up, but it is a little too loud, and I've tried reducing the volume on my phone or via the speaker itself, and I can't seem to control the power on or power off tone. The volume of it is just a little too loud. So that's honestly the only thing I don't like about this speaker. But otherwise, I think it's a terrific little speaker to own. It performs terrifically well, especially on a clarity front. So I think it is super value for money. So speaking about the price, at the time of recording this video, it has a MRP of $69.99. But you can get this at a selling price of $39.99, which I think is a terrific deal for these. So I will leave the link to this speaker down in the description below. And is it value for money? Well, honestly, at $40 worth, considering how clean it sounds, and if you want a speaker for that kind of setup where you want something that's calming and not too heavy in the bass, I think this is terrific. It does what it needs to do. It does have an IP rating, so if you're listening to it near a pool or at the beach while you're on a break, it's a terrific little speaker to have. So there you have it. That's everything you needed to know about the Sanag M13S Pro, and I do hope that you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.